But just as we start every episode of the Nonprofit Show, we definitely like to spend a little bit of time thanking and showing our gratitude to our presenting sponsors. So thank you so much for believing in the sector so much and investing in the conversation on this national platform. We are so grateful to be in partnership with all of our sponsors. So thank you so very much. And of course, thank you to Julia Patrick, who said, let's have this crazy conversation every weekday. And here we are, episode 233. I checked this morning. Julia Patrick is the CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy. And I am Jarrett Ransom, CEO of the Rayven Group, also known as the Nonprofit Nerd. And today I'm excited to nerd out with Ashley Rumschlag. And Ashley came to us by way of Red Rover. So we've had Red Rover on, we've had a couple of conversations with their CEO. And Ashley, welcome. So glad to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
You know, I got to ask you before we move on to the Purple Ribbon Awards. I have seen the Teresa's Fund logo and sponsorship on things. Mm-hmm. Can you talk to us about that? Is that the genesis of your organization's work?
Yes. Yeah. So Teresa's Fund kind of started back in 1992. Founded by Preston McMurray, and a lot of the money that was funneled into Teresa's Fund at that time was through employee donations from the content marketing company that they were running, and of course other donations as well. So kind of creating that foundation, and they put a lot of money into expanding shelter capacity in the state of Arizona. You may have, if you've ever toured the Sojourner Center, which is downtown, it's a domestic violence specific shelter. You'll see Teresa's Fund on the side of the building there. So, it started way back in, early 90s. And then more recently in 2014, kind of identified that the internet was missing something, kind of that one-stop shop for people to go find their local shelter, find information about domestic violence. And so domesticshelters.org was born.
Wow, it's amazing. It's such a robust site, and it's really an amazing tool for people associated with the sector of domestic violence, as well as just our community members wondering what it's about, help. It's fascinating. So great job to you all. But today we want to have you talk about something really innovative that you're doing, and that's the Purple Ribbon Awards.
Yes, yeah. So one of the other things that Preston, our founder, has kind of dreamed about for many, many years was having a large scale awards program where we could recognize the amazing work that these heroes are doing in their own communities or on a national or a global scale. And so, the last few years, we've kind of started putting the pieces together, and officially on January 1st of this year, the program went live, and we've started accepting nominations. And it's been quite a joy to read through and just see the work that's being done and kind of see how people are stepping up to recognize the work that's being done.
And this is international. This is an international award opportunity. Is that correct?
It is, yes. We want to recognize, on a worldwide scale. Our reach is mainly in the United States and Canada, some in the UK and Australia, just based on the fact that we only offer content in English.
Right.
Yeah, but I've already been in talks with someone in Nigeria that's interested in nominating a program. But we just want to, domestic violence knows no borders. It's the same, pervasive issue throughout the world. So we want to be able to really shine that light and really, lift up those programs.
Oh my gosh, I love it. What a great thing. So one of the things that I thought was really interesting looking at the website, Ashley, was that, I think sometimes in the nonprofit sector, we look at these types of awards or opportunities and we're like, oh, all this work and there's only one award and we're never going to win it. So it takes you off the table, but you have so many categories.
Yes. Yeah. That was one of the things, in our early stages of kind of how do we approach this program? Right. We really wanted to create a broad, range of categories people could be nominated in, because it also gets people thinking about, oh yeah, that Kiwanis group in our community really did a great job on that fundraiser, and that really helped us. And it gives organizations a way to recognize the people that are helping them, not only just the work that they're doing.
Right. Yeah.
Supporting organizations as well.
Which I loved. And, I don't know what you think about that, Jarrett, but we don't see a lot of that. We don't see a lot of people celebrating the organizations and the groups that support us.
No, I don't think we do. Not often enough, right? Like there's
not often
community awards, and there's, maybe a business journal opportunity, but overall, I don't think it's usually, really highlighting those partnerships and the other supporters. But it takes so many people to really elevate this conversation. So I appreciate the diversity and the variety there in those categories.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's domestic violence takes so many hands across so many different, sectors of the community. So, we really want to make sure that those are recognized, because we feel as though, the more we recognize them, the more other communities will look to them as the leading example of, where to head and what to do next.
Right. Talk to us about some of those categories, because they're not necessarily the usual suspects.
Right. Yeah. So some of the top ones that, I'm looking forward to seeing, the submissions come in, the nominations come in are, law enforcement partner of the year. We actually, we've been in talks with some other, law enforcement and police departments across the country, and learning about these different programs that they're putting together. And it's just incredible once that switch is flipped, once they realize, okay, it's no longer just a behind closed doors issue, and they start to understand what domestic violence really is and how pervasive it is, and how, what role they play in stopping it in their communities. And so we really want to, shine a light on those law enforcement departments that are making those changes. Obviously last year was very challenging. And so it kind of we had a new category that came up just based around, COVID response plan. So we want to recognize people who, everyone, really stepped up and changed on a dime to make their services available, remotely or in some kind of safe way. And so we want to recognize, the different response plans. Obviously there's the survivor of the year, there's the, shelter of the year, shelter or program of the year, volunteer of the year, but, those law enforcement and also legal advocates. So looking at attorneys that get it, that understand the difference, recognizing judges, those types of people.
That's great. Yeah. And it really gives every community the opportunity to say thank you and to acknowledge the commitment and dedication to preventing this.
That's amazing.
Absolutely.
So as part and parcel to that, Ashley, how are you operating the judging? And also I want to touch on, have you share this on the entry process?
Certainly. Yeah. So as far as our judging panel, we've worked hard to recruit a lot of national experts like Katie Campbell from Red Rover, but with very broad list of people who have either worked in the field or have just years of experience related to domestic violence. And so they'll be our pool of judges. And once the entry period ends at the end of March, they'll go through and rate each entry across 3 different criteria, and then our fancy little algorithm in the back end will kind of show us what the highest scoring entries are, and we'll go from there as far as revealing the winners. But as far as the entry process goes, anyone that wants to enter, it's as simple as going to purpleribbon.awards.org, and from there you'll see an enter tab. You do create an account so that way you can make changes and manage and add new entries at any time. So you get all the information right there on the website, from the list of categories, guidelines, frequently asked questions. All of that is there right in one place on the purpleribbon.awards.com, or .org. And then also you can just go to domesticshelters.org, where we have a tab for the awards program.
Wow. Is there an entry fee associated with entry? Okay.
Yeah, so to help us kind of cover the cost of the program, we do ask for an entry fee of $49.99. And that's just payable, whenever you submit the entry. You can go in there, get everything set up, and then, when you're ready, go ahead and hit submit and pay that entry fee, and then it comes through into our funnel of nominees.
Great.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
And how many entries do you think you're going to get? I mean, is this the first year you've done this?
This is the inaugural year of the Purple Ribbon
Oh,
Award. So, we have high expectations. We've been, our initial expectations have been exceeded so far, but, we're hoping anywhere from, 300 to 500 total submissions by the end of the process. So, yeah.
And it
Awesome.
opened in January, correct? So you
Yes,
said
opened
this
in
launched,
January.
opened in January, and the deadline is coming up next month, I want to say, like during the month,
Yes.
the domestic violence month. Okay.
So
Right.
yeah, in March, we will close out the entries. Anyone that's submitted, in that period, they can make changes up until that point on March 31st, when we'll close things out. Yeah, it's kind of nice. You think of other things you want to add throughout the applicant process. You can go back at any time and make changes, because we won't lock things in for our judges and start assigning judges to entries until the end of March.
Now, in terms of these awards, is there a cash, like what's the award look like, and what?
Right.
what does
Yes.
that mean?
Yes. So the most important part, what do the winners get? So
Yeah.
obviously, we've kind of focused a lot on the recognition piece of things. Obviously, we'll be recognizing them on domesticshelters.org and in other kind of content forms, just to kind of shine that light really brightly. But, obviously, a big draw for this program is that we will be giving out $30,000 in grants. You'll kind of, once we recognize all the winners we'll determine, where that money should be distributed based on the quality of the entries and the kind of the impact that they're making in their communities.
Wow. So it could be, a handful of winners, or it could be a lot of different winners.
Exactly. Yeah. And we're kind of keeping that open this first year, because, we want to make sure that we have some flexibility to really, distribute that money where it's going to make the most impact based on the programs that are being set up. And just to clarify, all of the grant money will go towards organizations, not individuals. So if someone works for a specific organization and they are the winner, the grant money would go to that organization.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. Really exciting. I think that it's you don't really have anybody else in the sector talking about this in such a way. I mean, first of all, domestic violence is such a taboo subject across the board in so many ways. So to do this is really a neat thing. And you're going to see a lot of different participation, I would imagine.
Yeah, we're really excited to start really diving into the different nominations, just to see, what's happening out there, and what are people seeing, what problems are they, overcoming that maybe we hadn't even recognized, because then, we can in turn provide additional solutions. And that's really what domesticshelters.org is all about. It's, where can we step up and provide information, provide tools, other support that advocates and survivors need that doesn't already exist.
Right.
It's been a topic really been spotlighted during the pandemic. So over the last year, right, it's been a lot of conversation, or at least I've heard a lot of conversation around, the victims not able to flee their situation, not able to ask for help. Like some of these clinics and places aren't open. And so a lot of the victims are stuck at home with their abuser. So this conversation at large has really had a lot of, I don't know what to call it, but a lot of time in narrative because of it being such a prominent issue. Yeah,
absolutely. And we're only now starting to really see, hard data on how this has affected survivors and affected the programs that serve them. And I think a lot of places are stepping up. I know New York recently, I think it's $1.5 million that they're pushing out to shelters to help them, up their technology. Because if you think about it, people in shelters now have to become schools too, because the schools aren't open. And so there's just all these different things that come into play. And, it's really important that, the communities step up to support those that, just need an extra hand to kind of get back and back on their feet.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ashley, share some of the knowledge that you have about the domestic violence sector, and maybe put it into context of how the U.S. reacts to this topic versus other parts of the world, or maybe even regionally.
Yeah.
I mean, what can you share with us?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I came into, working with domesticshelters.org without any understanding of domestic violence. I came into this with what I think most people would think of domestic violence. They think about it with a black eye. They think about it as, a woman who, is in a relationship that maybe she should just be able to leave. Why wouldn't she just be able to leave? And I think the biggest misconception is just that it's easy to leave, that if she wanted to, she would just walk out the door. And so there's this, stigma that, in the US and really around the world, people place on women and of course men also experience domestic violence, at a lesser extent or lesser rate, I should say, not extent. And so it's really important that communities recognize that there are so many barriers for people to leave, an abusive situation. For example, they have children, and many times if they disclose the abuse, their children will be taken away from them because it's considered, neglect. And they could lose custody. In many cases, the abuser is the one that ends up getting full custody because the victim looks as though they've kind of allowed this situation to happen. And so, this idea that, they're being blamed for the abuse happening to them. But yeah, it's very much lots of misconceptions out there about what abuse is, how easy it is to leave, or how hard it is to leave. And there are a lot of resources out there, but there aren't enough. There's not enough money being put into these resources to help people truly escape and truly stay safe and, truly rebuild their lives.
Yeah. Well, and that was one of the things that Red Rover had shared with us, is how many times a victim will not leave their situation because the animal. And so that is one of the resources too that really needs to be considered as to why someone may not leave or come back.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And like I said, on our website, if you just Google or search in our articles, 50 barriers to leaving, you'll see a full list of very valid and very real barriers to keep people there. Financial abuse occurs in 99% of all abusive situations, meaning, that person that's trying to leave has no access to the money, even, money that they're earning themselves. Right. So there's so many things that come into play. And, as I learned kind of coming into this with fresh eyes, it's way more complex than I ever could have imagined. And I think that's part of the reason why it is so hard to, kind of get people gathered around the issue and really, putting together some, really strong legislation and community support systems, because it is so hard for people to understand unless they've experienced it themselves.
Right. Yeah. Right. Are you still going by, or I shouldn't say still, does your organization go by the stat that 1 in 4 women will be involved in domestic violence within their lifetime?
Yeah, we tend to quote that, say 1 in 4 and 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. And how do you see domestic violence? And I think you're probably going to really see this with the Purple Awards. How do you see the conversation shaping up in other parts of the globe?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of movement, particularly in the UK, where they've actually implemented laws to outlaw coercive control, which is that missing piece. I kind of mentioned earlier that most people think of the physical side of abuse, the black eyes, the injuries, but where I see a lot of other countries going are trying to put some legislation in place that will allow people to prosecute when it is mental abuse, it's financial abuse, it's all the kind of really more pervasive types of abuse that have a real detrimental effect on women and men. who are experiencing abuse. So, that's been a really promising thing, is to see that legislation being put into place. Now, how well it's going to be able to be implemented and kind of carried out is another thing. But, those have been pretty promising. And I've heard that conversation happening a lot in Australia as well, as far as, what is coercive control and how can we, legislate around that to protect victims.
Yeah, to advocate for that. And that's really where those
Yeah.
community resources come into play. Is it's more than just the domestic violence shelter. It's the law enforcement, it's the legal team.
Yeah.
It's, if there's so many people that play a role into preventing these measures. And so that community resource and knowledge is so important. Love that the Purple Ribbon Awards are also acknowledging those community leaders that play a very significant role.
It's amazing. Well, it's hard to believe, but our time is almost up. And I think I say that every day. It's hard to believe our time is almost up.
It goes by quickly.
I know, it does. I want to make sure that we understand the awards opened on January 1st. They're going to close at the end of March. Then from there, you're going to have your hands full going through all these submissions. What does this look like, and how are they going to be announced, and what can we expect?
Yeah, so like I said, our group of expert judges will go through and score each entry, and then we'll determine what the winners are. And then from there, we kind of have a barrage of press releases and videos and other kinds of content that we'll do to highlight each individual winner. We have a lot of our social media reaches on Facebook, so we'll do a lot of kind of publicity there, really just kind of shouting it from a mountaintop of how, the names of the winners, what they've accomplished, sharing their stories. So kind of if you're interested in staying up to date on that, I would definitely encourage people to go to domesticshelters.org and get signed up on our email list, so that way you can be notified of all the wonderful stories that we discover throughout this process.
Awesome. And they're going to be announced, the winners will be announced all at one time, or will it be a rollout, or have you decided that yet?
We haven't decided yet. Initially, thoughts are probably that we'll announce them all at once, but then we'll probably highlight each one individually, kind of rolling over the remainder of the year, kind of to make sure that everyone gets a lot of focused attention.
Right. And congratulations on your first, swing at this. I mean, this is a big deal, and it's going to be really exciting to see how it all comes about, and the lessons learned of doing an award for the sector. That might be something we bring you back on to learn your lessons, because there's so many different sectors that could take this idea and really celebrate what everybody's doing. I know Jarrett was the moderator of the Resourcefulness Awards, and one of the really cool things that I just watched it. I wasn't able to participate because I was doing the show, but they spent time telling those stories, like you just mentioned, of the award winners, and you can learn lessons from what another organization did that was, maybe a new idea that you wouldn't have thought of.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, really cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's really been great. We are so appreciative, Ashley, that domesticshelters.org is championing this difficult conversation, and I'm really honoring those from all different avenues that come and participate and make this a conversation that is easier to have and understand. Make sure you check out domesticshelters.org. And as Ashley said, there's a link on that site that allows you to understand how to participate if you're interested. But more importantly, there's a lot of information about the condition of domestic violence, how it impacts our communities and our families. It's a really powerful site. So we are super appreciative that you came on today to share that with us. Again, I'm Julia Patrick. I'm CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy. I've been joined today by the nonprofit nerd herself, Jarrett Ransom, CEO of the Rayven Group. And really great topic. I look forward to finding out who those winners are. And I want to mention briefly, because I think this will be, phone. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm actually blushing. I forgot to turn the ringer off in the office phone. Anyway, long story short, check us out if you need some coaching on maybe like how to run your phone system. And again, we want to thank our sponsors. Without you, we would not be here having these vital conversations that we do every day. And so thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts to our amazing sponsors. Hey, another great episode. We want to thank everyone for being with us. And again, to remind everyone and even ourselves, stay well so you can do well. We'll see you back here tomorrow.